Kevin, welcome to the show.
Hey man, how's things going over there?
It's good. It's good. We actually have pretty good weather. I'm in the hoodie. We're in. You don't get to probably experience that a ton over in P Town, but
Not
it's not bad here. So weather's good. It's always good there. You guys are shoveling sunshine pretty much the entire year. But contrary to where you grew up. So let's just go ahead and dive into that. So from Montana, the hotbed of basically professional baseball. You guys per capita may have like the most pro athletes per capita in the country, right? I mean, it's you, and then we'll talk about some of the other guys. But tell us a little bit about that because I loved the story and thank you for sharing that. But hit the guests with it.
Yeah. So grew up in a smaller town in Montana. 50,000 or so. I just happened to also live right around the corner from Ryan Leaf. So we kind of grew up together. He was a year older than me, but it was great growing up with him because he definitely pushed me to get a lot better athletically. So, um, but yeah, as far as growing up there and baseball, um, there is no high school baseball in Montana, which a lot of people don't realize until I tell them that. We have summer legion baseball, which I played growing up, but there's not a whole lot of baseball guys coming out of the state. When I grew up, there was no college baseball either in Montana. There was no. Now there's two junior colleges and a Division II school in Billings, but those were not options when I was going to high school. I ended up then going to a junior college, Southern Idaho. Had a great time there, and then played 2 years at the University of Northern Colorado, and kind of slowly migrated my way south into some better baseball weather. So
Mm-hmm. No doubt, no doubt. So you are in, if I was reading that right, in your 11th year at Phoenix College, and so you just missed me. I played at South Mountain in 2008 and 2009. So right before you got there, which is really neat, and a small world. And so I'll be honest with you, I remember Phoenix College being really bad, and since you took over they have been on an upward trajectory, and you guys have set lots of different team records. And so, just talk to us about when you took that job. Okay, so if I can use wasn't as successful as you wanted it to be whenever you took the job. So, what was that transition like of getting guys to buy in to your culture, trying to understand what would lead to success there, and then just really getting the boat to turn because it's almost like a slow turn. And with junior college, you've got half of your roster turning over every single year, and that's also could be a gift and a curse. You get a good recruiting class and whatnot. But just tell us a little bit about what that transition was like and how you got it started to go in the right direction.
yeah, well, you're right. The cupboard was pretty bare when I first got here. Um, I was also an assistant at Gateway Community College the 2 years prior to taking the head job here, and during those 2 years, we ended up being towards the bottom and climbing to the top the second year. That was when this job opened up, and I applied for it and obviously got that. Um, at that point in my coaching career, kind of like a lot of young coaches, I thought that I had a lot of things figured out. Um, and I quickly realized it was going to be a lot tougher than I thought. Um, by the third year here, we ended up in the postseason and had a chance to. Uh, we got um, we were eliminated in a game that if had we won, we would have went to the region championship. And then a couple years after that, we got to the region championship, and then a couple years after that, we were in the World Series. But it was definitely a process. You know, I mean, just as far as hitting is concerned, which is I feel like probably my biggest strength as a coach. For the first 7 years that I was here, um, we made incremental gains every single year in OPS, slugging percentage, batting average, you name it, for pretty much 7 straight years, which was when we went to the World Series in 2017. Uh, and then once again, I kind of thought, now I really have it figured out. Um, you know, 7 straight years, our offense is getting better. We're at the World Series. So I was feeling pretty good about myself at that point again. And that was around the time that I started to get a little bit more into social media and Twitter, and kind of following some of the latest trends and who's doing what, and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, you know what, we can still, get a little bit better. And so we made some changes to, kind of how we do business with, just coaching our hitters and whatnot. Uh, and to kind of shorten up the story, we got worse the next year. And I justified it as, shoot, we can't just keep getting better every single year. Eventually, that's got to kind of, come back down to earth. We had just went to the World Series and lost quite a few guys off our roster. So again, I was like, you know what happens? Next year happened again. We even worse offensive numbers. So at that point, I was like, you know what? I kind of drank the Kool-Aid a little bit, and when we got worse, maybe let's go back to some of the things that I know works. Because for those couple years, we started to, emphasize pulling the baseball more, pulling the baseball in the air, and, doing damage, all that kind of stuff, which is good and all. But the things that we did at practice, as far as, just BP and all those types of things, I went back to, because I know they work. And it's then the following year, we started to get better again, and that was when the pandemic hit, and the season was cut short. And then the following year, we went back to the World Series again. So it's one of those things as a coach, probably, it's something that every coach should probably go through, is a little bit of a struggle, and start to understand, the things that, help your teams be successful. And we went back to those things, and we're better off for it. So in a way, I'm kind of glad that we went through it. Humbled me a little bit, which is always a good thing too. But those 2 years, 2018 and 2019, were the years that I learned the most about myself as a coach, not just hitting, but just overall kind of handling a team. But I'm a better coach now for it. It just was a couple kind of rough years, but um, it's I think we're going in the right direction now. Again, I like where we're at as a club, and I think we'll have another pretty good year.
I love hearing that. And so I think, obviously, if you're telling us that stuff, you're a very self-reflective person, and I think we could all benefit from being more that way. But one of the things that you shared with me is your coaching philosophy PowerPoint, and the thing that you share with the team. And so I'd love to be able to add that to the stream, and you just kind of walk us through some of the different highlights that you share with them, you want to share with us, and just outlining your philosophy. And so I'll add that to the stream right now. And you're going to talk about different BP rounds. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So first off, this kind of came about as a result of the pandemic, and I was kind of sitting around my house and thinking, I don't want to waste this time. We weren't, our season was basically done for. I wasn't really quite sure what summer or even the following fall was going to look like. So I started kind of putting some things together. And the main reason I started putting it together was just in case that, when we got to fall baseball, maybe there was a chance that I wasn't going to be able to be, as hands on as I'd like to be, or maybe we weren't going to have any fall practices at all, which is what it ended up being. So I put this together so I could get a little bit of a head start in with the new guys in our program, for them to understand the things that we do, why we do them, um, see it in writing, also see it, some visual aids and all those types of things, and just kind of explain our philosophy. I don't know if that's the reason that why we or ended up, going to the World Series last year, but I think it's I think it helped, gave us a little bit of a head start. Um, so, but yeah, as far as this screen that's up right now, as far as our BP is concerned, for the most part, all of our BP rounds are involve the technical aspects of the swing and putting the swing together. Uh, there's, and I'm not saying any other ways are wrong, but I've been in programs and I know programs where, they take rounds, hey, runners at second, we're trying to move them to third this round, or we're trying to score them from third here, those types of things, which are good. But if your swing sucks, I guess, it's going to be tougher to execute those rounds.
Sure.
So we're trying to put the swing together. So, as far as these 10 BP rounds, one of the first ones that we work on fairly often, putting the barrel on the inside half of the baseball. To me, I always tell our players, if there's one thing that you take from playing here for a couple of years, it's that right there, as far as what you're trying to do with the baseball. To go back to around the time of the pandemic, right before that hit, we were actually playing a team that was going to be in the World Baseball Classic, Team Brazil. They were on our schedule. Barry Larkin was actually the head coach of that team, and Steve Finley was an assistant. Troy Hawkins was an assistant. So I knew that during BP, I wasn't going to waste this opportunity to talk to Barry Larkin about hitting. So I went over to their dugout and started talking about a few things, and we essentially got on to the topic of staying inside the baseball. And he asked me, he goes, what do you think that or what does that mean to you? Because that term means different things to everyone. Obviously, your hands are inside the baseball on every swing, but there's multiple ways to look at it. One is, which is what he said, he goes, if I just think about putting my barrel on the inside half of the baseball, that's really the main cue that I think about. Which stuck with me, obviously, because Barry Larkin could hit a little bit, but it also can mean keeping your hands going in a straight line towards the pitcher. It can also mean keeping your barrel inside your hands as you approach the pitch. So there's multiple meanings, and one of those cues might work better for a player than something else. So my job is to find out which cue works for which guy, and whatever cue works for them, that means inside the baseball for you. Okay. But as a program, that's definitely one of the things we put an emphasis on. The second one on there, first hop in the infield dirt. This is one of the rounds that we used to do on a regular basis until 2018 and 2019. We did away with this. Because I got infatuated with hitting balls in the air, and we ended up with long and loopy swings. But I stole this round from, and I don't remember where I read it or saw it, but it was from Mike Schmidt. And Mike Schmidt has 500 plus home runs. But he used to say that whenever his swing kind of felt a little bit long, that in BP he would try to hit line drives where the first hop happened in the infield dirt area. That's where he wanted the first bounce to be. And that was a round that we started to go back the last couple of years. This is a type of round for a guy that, maybe had his attack angle is a little bit too much of an uppercut type swing. A guy that doesn't stay through the ball well enough. Once he makes contact, it's up and off the baseball, and he's hitting a lot of topspin ground balls, those types of things, or even topspin line drives. So it's a very simple round. It's an external goal, and it helps with those couple things as far as, like I said, flattening out the swing a little bit for guys that are a little bit too getting the ball a little bit too much in the air. And in my personal opinion, I feel like in practice you should be working slightly lower than you would in a game, and by that I mean the trajectory off the bat. In a game, obviously, you're facing pitchers with a little bit more velo, so the ball is going to maybe make contact. There's not going to be as much drop to the ball. So the ball is going to make higher contact a little bit as far as on the barrel. So you're going to naturally, hit a few more balls higher up on the barrel, I guess. But I always tell our hitters to work slightly lower in practice than you would in the game. As far as the third round on there, 2 strikes. We do a 2-strike round literally every day, even on game days. And we do it because 50% of your at bats are going to get to 2 strikes. And if that's the case, if you have 4 plate appearances and in 2 of them you're hitting with 2 strikes on average, why don't you work on it very often? So we have a certain approach. I'm probably not going to get into our personal approach as far as our philosophy, but I will say this as far as a 2-strike round. It accomplishes a few different things. Number one, it gets you work on hitting random pitches, because we don't just throw fastballs and it's not just breaking balls. The hitter does not know what's coming during that round. So we're hitting. It also helps to have a good BP guy or guys. I throw pretty good BP. We have another assistant that's a left-hander, so it's perfect. We get both sides of it. Both of us are able to mix in random pitches. So you're facing random pitches, which there's a lot of guys that look really good in when it's 50 miles an hour right down the middle all the time. But
Sure.
once you start changing speeds and the ball's moving a little all over the place, that changes things. So that's the other reason we work on that round every single day. And I guess the third reason is our guys are now confident to hit with 2 strikes in games, because we do it all the time. That it's a very normally uncomfortable situation that they're more comfortable in now, because we work on it all the time. Preparation, leads to confidence, and we led our conference in the least amount of strikeouts last year offensively, which it's not like that's everything about hitting, but it helps. We played a conference doubleheader last year. We were forced to play a lot of doubleheaders, but we played a conference doubleheader last year. And in the first game, we didn't strike out one time. In the second game, we struck out once. So our guys put the barrel on a lot of balls, and it's not like we just say we're just trying to put the ball in play. That's not us. We led the conference in OPS too, so we can slug it around a little bit. As far as the fourth one on there, no stride, and keep your back heel in the ground. This is one of the first things that I look at in a hitter, is what does their back foot do? If your back foot, when you finish your swing, if your heel ends up kind of pointed towards the catcher or kind of flopped around towards the plate, it's usually telling me a couple different things. One, it's telling me you're not decelerating very well. Number two, it's usually what that tells me is your back foot is moving independent of your hips. You want your hips to turn your back foot. So if the back foot ends up spinning and does that, that's like I said, that's one of the first things I look at in a hitter. So this drill helps out with that. It helps out as far as the sequencing of things, because it should be, proximal to distal, meaning your hips turn your back foot, your hips move your hands. The hands don't initiate movement, they get moved. Same thing with the back foot. It doesn't initiate movement, it gets moved. And the only way to do that sometimes is to force our guys to keep their back heels in the ground. And that helps kind of reinforce that the correct way to swing. It's tough to, I guess, make changes in a swing. By the time I get these guys, they're 19, 20 years old. A lot of their swing, like the DNA of their swing is essentially, it kind of is what it is. So it takes a lot of repetitions to kind of fix some of those things. And as far as the repetitions are concerned, that one of the things I talk about with our guys, obviously, everybody's, quality is better than quantity, but to me, it's both. To me, you have to have a lot of quality repetitions. When you're down in the cages, when you're taking BP, when you're on your own, whatever, because it's not just mindless repetitions that are going to get you better. I always like to use the analogy, and I said this to my players a few times, like, I've been driving for whatever 20, 25 years now since I've got my license, and I'm not really any better at driving than I was when I first started it. And it's because when I drove here today, I wasn't trying to get better at driving. I was on autopilot. And that's what a lot of guys are at practice, is they're just on autopilot. And I want our guys to understand, like, these things that we're working on in BP, you also have to take it down to the cages and get that work in. And to be honest, I don't like to be down in the cages with our guys all the time. There's things that they're supposed to do. But I don't think they need a coach over their shoulder all the time. I think guys need to feel like they have the freedom to experiment and also have some fun at practice as well. There's certain things that I want to get done, but over the years, I found myself coaching less, and we're accomplishing more. A couple weeks ago, we were taking BP on the field. In one of these rounds, we were trying to, I can't remember what we were doing, but the first two swings, I was just like, man, those were not good. And the old me, probably 5 or 6 years ago, would have stepped in right then and said, hey, you're not doing this, or you need to do this. But I decided not to say anything, and that kid fixed it the next swing. And which is the best thing ever, because now that kid, he did it on his own. I didn't say anything. And now he's learning. He's learning more than me just having to feed him information. And like I always tell our guys, you're going to be your own best hitting coach. So that was great to see, and I was glad that I didn't step in and say something. So, but anyway, to kind of get back on track here, so to speak. As far
Yeah,
as
let's
yeah, go
one
ahead.
one of the things that that I want to discuss with you too is the mentality behind it. And I really like your BP rounds, and I think most of the other ones that I've seen that I'm looking at are pretty self-explanatory, and I think they're really well thought out. But when we're talking about making these changes, and you're talking about player evaluation, one of the first things that you put in your PowerPoint, which I agree with, is you're talking about the mentality behind it. And so, is that one of the first things that you, when they get to campus, one of the first things that you discuss with them? So, I think that you mentioned you put it in a sequential order of, and it could go either way. But is mentality and focus and deliberate practice and all of those things that you've even hit on a little bit, is that really the first step that you go through, or do you have a different process?
Yeah, for the most part, I mean, the very first day that we get together as a team, we spent the first day probably 30, 45 minutes, me kind of talking about um, expectations and standards of the program, and kind of our approach to the game. Um, One of the things that you know that we believe in is, there's going to be, number one, there's going to be calls that go against us in a game. whether it's a pitcher out there that, doesn't get a strike called, or vice versa with a hitter at the plate or a play at first base or just whatever. I want our guys to understand that, as far as body language, okay, we want to make sure that we show that it didn't affect us. Mentally, if our players were in here right now and you say, what does the coach tell you to think when one of these things happen? In unison, they would say, thank you for making me a better baseball player. Because that's what they're taught. That's what I tell them to. As soon as that call is made and it goes against us, obviously it puts us in a tougher situation as a team. But if you dwell on that, and you let it affect you mentally, you outwardly show it in your body language, then it does us no good. But if your immediate thought is, thank you for making me a better baseball player, Mr. Umpire, it turns the tide, so to speak. And that's what I want. I want tough players. And I'm not saying that they should never be disappointed in something. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I just want guys that literally nothing affects them. Every single day we start out the day in a classroom and we do 5 minutes of visualization every single day. And it's not just sit there and daydream about how good you can be as a player. We talk about, number one, why it's good for you. Number two, we talk about kind of how to how to view things, what you should be doing during that visualization time. But I think it's really important, and I don't think enough kids would necessarily do it on their own. So we, in a sense, kind of force them to do it. Early in the fall here in Arizona, obviously out on the field, it's like 105, 110 degrees. So we don't do that outside. I don't want our guys just laying out in the grass for 5 minutes and thinking about how hot it is. So we do that inside. And we also spend classroom time inside talking about some of the stuff that we just mentioned. If we have a scrimmage or a game, usually the next day we're back in talking through some situations to make sure guys understand, like, this is what should have happened, or we did great here, and so on and so forth. But shoot, there's days we sometimes we spend the first 30-40 minutes of practice inside, just talking through things, guys asking questions, and we encourage them to ask questions, even if it's somehow some constructive criticism for me or the coaching staff. I ask our players to get better. I want them to help me get better. So if there's things that they see that we can get better at, I want to know, and I encourage them to ask questions on why we made certain decisions. One of our catchers the other day, we made a first and third call on defense a certain way, and he came up to me afterwards like, "Hey, why did you put this certain play on?" And I answered the question, but it was good that he was paying attention and wanted to know those things and kind of see the game through the eyes of a coach. But I just think those things are really important and overlooked. I don't think enough time is really spent on that side of the game. And, I want our guys to be confident, but I also want them to be brutally honest with themselves as far as what their weaknesses are, things they can improve on. To me, that's what mental toughness is being brutally honest with yourself as far as your weaknesses, but also not letting that necessarily affect or erode your confidence as a player. And once you kind of get to that point, that's the first hurdle. Kind of the next hurdle is, like, how good do you want to be? Do you want to be great? Because greatness is a choice. And greatness can be lonely sometimes because it requires more effort than just the average baseball player. And that means sometimes being the first guy to practice, sometimes the last guy to leave, and then on top of that, not just being that guy, but hopefully bringing some of those other guys along with you, so you're not just kind of doing that on your own. But you know, there's a lot of guys that want to be great, and then when they realize, when it comes to time to do the stuff that's required to be great, they don't want to be great anymore. They're okay with
Hmm.
good enough, and that's something we talk about often in our program. Is good enough is the enemy of great. If you just want to be good enough, then this isn't the program for you.
Hmm.
We're trying to be the best. We're trying to win a bunch of games, and develop players in the process. But um, like I said, there's a price to pay with greatness, and sometimes it means less time playing video games, less time with friends and family. But is what it is.
No doubt, no doubt. And one of the things that I think that you've hit on a couple of times, which I think is really interesting too, and an approach that I think we can all do a better job of is helping guys, especially with their swing. Okay, that you're never going to have a perfect swing, and I mean I've never, and maybe I'm just a terrible coach. I have no idea, but I've never run into a guy that I have made his swing gone from terrible to like elite, right?
Hmm.
I didn't do that. Maybe we've given them tools to be able to work on, but a lot of it is self awareness. A lot of it has to do on their own. I mean, we're so limited with time, and especially you get them for a fall and a spring, and they might be gone. And so, just understanding where they're at, what their goals are, uh, how great they want to be, because you have several different guys who you'll have. You may have a guy for 3 years, and you have a lot more evolution that you can go through with that guy. But ideally, you want them for a year, and then you guys are winning, and you're going on to bigger and better things. But just understanding, okay, here's how your swing works, and here's how we can be successful within that. Because if you put all big league guys next to each other, all elite guys, they're all going to have differences. And whose swing is the best? Whoever is just the most effective for the longest period of time, right? And then understanding what they're doing within that. So, can we get better? Absolutely. But I love the approach that you're also taking of, hey, let's understand what we already do well, hunting pitches in those zones, and making sure that we're staying true to who we are, while also continuing to hone our weaknesses and understanding what they are. Because I think that I know in the past I've gotten lost in the search for the perfect swing, and now I'm to the point now where I'm trying to understand how much time I actually have with X player, how good they want to be, and then we can come up with a plan to be able to maximize whatever that is in the time period that we have. And I feel really comfortable with that, because I used to beat my head just against the wall all the time trying to get guys to fix their swing. And sometimes I look back going, man, maybe they didn't want it as bad as I did, and I was not wasting all of that time, because I want to coach well, but I was taking the wrong approach with it, if that all makes sense. I don't know if you've ever had that transition too, but it's freed me up to be able to go, hey, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying here's what you do well, and then let's develop a plan around that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean that makes a ton of sense to me, and you know, um, that's hitting is definitely not. There's nothing cookie cutter about it. There's
Hmm.
there's guys that are successful doing uh, lots of different things.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things I put in that PowerPoint was, that I explained to our players, there's something that's in here that I say that you should do, that you'll or shouldn't do, that you'll be able to turn on a major league game tonight, and you'll
And
see
you'll
him
see
do
it.
the opposite.
Yeah.
Um, and he's making millions of dollars, and I'm telling my guys don't do this or whatever.
Yeah.
There's always going to be exceptions to the rule. Um, so in this day and age of, I mean, you can essentially, you can find out a lot about hitting if you know who to follow on social media and all those types of things. And that's one of the, I guess, the jobs that I've kind of taken for our players, is try to help them find out, or navigate that somewhat, and find out this is what's good, this is what's not, type thing. My players probably get tired of me sending them, video clips and things from Twitter. We have our team messaging app that we use, Slack, and
Love
I'm
it.
always sending stuff on there. Like, I really like this, or I send it to specific players, because something I tell one of my players, at practice, I may not want the guy standing 5 feet from him to hear that at all,
Sure.
because it will mess up his swing, but it's going to help the other guy's swing.
Right.
And that's what's tricky about hitting, is I don't have a lot of time to work individually with these players like they can
Hmm.
do. They can go to a hitting instructor and do
Right.
those types of things, and work. They can work individually with guys. I don't have that kind of time.
Right.
Uh, so a
Exactly.
lot of the hitting instruction I do is as a team and very broad.
Sure.
But then I also have to find ways to make connections with each of those players, individually, and kind of say, you know, we're doing this round today, essentially for you, type thing,
Hmm.
or so on and so forth. But um, that's the toughest part, about hitting is that kind of stuff, and knowing what's out there in the social media and what they're seeing, and trying
Sure.
to.
They're inundated.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's so much information.
Right. Well, and for me, with my my ever changing progression of coaching, it ultimately comes down to, do they want to do it? And we can set up an awesome environment, and you can set up the perfect drill, but in skill acquisition, if there's not deliberate practice, I know you've used that word as well, which I could not agree more. Deliberate practice and focus on the reps that they're going to have, they're just going to go back to, use the car driving analogy. They're going to go back to old patterns. And if you're telling them what to do, it's they may do it, but it's going to be more of an activity rather than they're working to mastery. And so I just really encourage, and it's not easy. Like taking a step back, you mentioned it. It's not easy to do, because if I feel like if guys would work really hard and listen to what we say, we have a lot of good information, then they're going to get better. But then we have the human element, which 50% of the time they're tuning us out anyways as coaches, or 40% I think is the thing. So anyways, long story short, I want to discuss like what you guys are doing for swing decisions. I know that that's kind of a fad now, but uh, I truly think that it's like one of the most important things, and it's silly because 10 years ago they're like, yeah, swing at strikes, like, yeah. And so
Hmm.
we've kind of evolved back to, okay, these guys are absolutely filthy. We want to try and land on pitches in the middle of the zone. And you guys have had a really successful walk to strikeout ratio. You talked about your two strike approach a little bit, or you hinted at it.
Hmm.
But how, like, do you think that two strike rounds and you guys doing that, and then really just hammering it home on, hey, we want to make good decisions, is that the most simple way to do it? Because you see guys tracking it. uh, we don't have TrackMan. We don't have a ton of resources to, and I don't want to sit behind and give, during practice anyways, and just tally everything. And so just trying to figure out ways to be able to give them instant feedback, I think is always a good thing. And so I would love to hear just your thoughts on how could we do better at training that skill, because you guys have really been successful at it.
Yeah, to me, I guess the place to start is to make sure that they're, on time first, because when you're on time, generally your eyes are going to see what they need to see, and track pitches better. So in order to be on time, you have to have a consistent time that you're starting, meaning everything for us is, work off of handbrake from the pitcher. And if we are slightly, if we're a little bit late, then we start slightly before handbrake. If we're a little bit early, then we start, uh, a little bit after handbrake, type thing. But everything should work off of handbrake first. Once you've got the timing part down, um, then it makes things a lot easier. I always tell our guys when we get to two strikes that we want to be able to, make our decision, a tad later, meaning, so then for the most part, we're trying to start, a tad after handbrake when we're in a two strike count. Not every time. there's little adjustments and things that we can make as far as that process is concerned. But so like I said, number one, it's work off of handbrake. Number two, I think just again taking around on a regular basis where you're not knowing what's coming is highly beneficial to tracking pitches and all those types of things. Um, so part of having a good team, to be honest, is how good is your BP guy? um, I feel like we have a couple really good ones, and that helps. We don't really use machines at all. Not to say that teams that do or whatever are wrong, but we don't like crank up the velocity to like 90 miles an hour and take BP all the time. Um, we've done it occasionally, but I don't think we've done it more than once or twice in the last couple of years. Um, the way we do work on velo, and I don't even remember how you pronounce his name, the guy that used to be the hitting coach for the Cubs, John Maley or Malley. Um, I remember I reading something once where they did kind of a velo BP where um, he was basically throwing from a seated position behind an L screen, like 22 feet from the plate. And that short overhand toss is like 35 miles an hour, which equates to, as far as just reaction time, upper 80s. And obviously, if you throw it harder than 35, it equates to a little bit, faster than that. Um, I my preference is to do things like that because for a couple reasons. One, it doesn't like blow up guys' bats and they get jammed off a machine throwing 90 and it's like it's no fun. And again, not to say that that's wrong or whatever. But to me, with machines, the biggest issue is the pitch doesn't slow down as much as it gets to the plate as it does off a guy that's on the mound throwing 90. When you get out the radar gun and the guy's throwing 90, and then when it crosses the plate, it's like 80. Well, a machine kind of stays pretty much that speed the whole way. And so the time and like I said, the timing aspect to me, it just messes up a lot of hitters. And then again, there's no arm motion to work off of timing of handbrake. And to me, like I said, that's paramount. Is how do you know if what adjustment to make if you're late? Um, the only adjustment you have to make an adjustment off of your timing, like when are you getting started and when are you starting that initial move of getting some rhythm into your swing. Um, so so that's the biggest points for me are that we definitely encourage also our guys to get on um, there's some vision kind of training apps that are free, that Game Sense and all that. There's a few other ones that I encourage our guys to get onto to train, just recognizing pitches, standing in and on guys throwing bullpens. We do actually do at this time of year some kind of vision kind of training charts that they use in the Air Force a little bit. So we try to do a number of different things to help with that. Um, but it also helps having, enough bat speed to be able to wait a little bit longer to make those decisions. That's a big part of the process too. So it's not ever just one thing. If you've got the best bat speed on the team and the best rotational acceleration, as far as dealing with blast sensor, which we use, your your time to contact is going to be a lot less than somebody else's, and that gives you more time to make those decisions. So that's to me they kind of go hand in hand.
Sure.